From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Thank you for that introduction. As always, Jim, we are in another week of the Weather Weeklies video. This is now our fourth week since we started this back up again. This goes every Sunday throughout the winter season, and it's a video blog discussing the long range, which we're going to get into. Also, any storm threats are on the horizon, which there is one this week. We have that coming this weekend. The question is whether or not it is going to be suppressed, or if it's going to hit at least marginally and give some areas some snow, or does it get a little bit more amplified and change snow to rain? So we're going to get into that and discuss exactly what we're looking at for the upcoming week and what you can look at as a weather enthusiast to follow along. We're going to start off with a long-range table from Friday. Pretty much everything's still in line with our timing of temperature changes and things like that. So right now, we're on the second here. It's going to be an above average day here, getting in the 50s. Same thing here for Monday. I think before that front comes through later in the day, should be a dry front or a mostly dry front. But behind that, once we get to Tuesday and beyond, is when we're looking at the colder temperatures come in for about a week or so. So we have below average temperatures here listed for between the 5th and 11th. And then it starts to come out of it on the 12th a little bit. And then we get into that slightly above average period after that point. Question's always been, how long does that period last? Now, we have slightly above average just for the 13th and 16th, then near to slightly above average after that point. I don't think this is, I keep hearing that word torch being thrown around, that we have a blowtorch coming in. Not a torch, folks. This is all relative to the time of year. It might be a little bit milder here for this period. The question is just going to be, how long does it last? How long does that hang on? And I think as we step closer to Christmas here, we start getting, or especially that the week between, say, New Year's, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, we're looking at a near average period. This might even turn to slightly below average, though, with time, if the stratosphere can help us out a little bit. I'll get into that in this video also. And then, of course, we're going to discuss that winter storm signal, which is still a signal. It's not a definite storm yet. This is not something that we're, sounding the alarms for. Look out, we're getting snow. Something to keep an eye on, definitely. But this has been a period that we have outlined in the long-range outlooks now and the Weather Weeklies videos for several weeks, and you can check tape on that. This is long before the models came into range. Long before. Models only run, even the ensembles, they only go to like 15 days. Beyond that point, you're looking at some things in the atmosphere that are that can support changes, and one of those things is the Madden-Julian Oscillation. This is just one of the things. We look at atmospheric angular momentum. We look at the any positive East Asian mountain torque episodes that could lead to changes. The SOI, which is the difference between the pressures in Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. So there's a lot of different things that contribute to what happens downstream when we look at these things. And well in advance before any model picks up on it, which are going to be slow this time of year to pick up on it because we're still in seasonal transition. The model's kind of slow to pick up on things. They hint at things every once in a while, but I was getting a bunch of messages on Twitter especially, but some on Facebook too, like, oh, did you see that storm that shows up on the GFS or the FV3, which is the new GFS that's going to be taking over in January, or the European model has a big storm for us. I don't know what you want me to tell you. I mean, I've been talking about this for weeks before this model's even had it, so this is not a surprise. And if you follow along with these videos, or the Friday or long-range outlooks, you understand that. So here is the Madden-Julian Oscillation. This is taking a look at the infrared temperatures, I should say, across the entire globe. So this is if you took the entire round Earth and put it on a flat piece of paper. This is, of course, metaphorically speaking. This is not really a flat Earth, for those of you that seem to think that there is, and I know there's some of you out there that think that. Anyway, we're looking at what's going along on the equator here. Like, where's this convection along the equator? And that's not really drawn very well, but you get the idea. We're looking at these regions here to see where the best convection is, and right now we're kind of in a phase one. This is looking at actually yesterday's snapshot of it. This is December 1st. Today's, of course, is the second. Best convection is kind of right around here, but it's a little weaker. So you have a phase one signal here. That's what we're in right now as of this morning, but it's a weaker phase one. It's not really overwhelming convection in that area. So it's not really overly driving the pattern. Okay, so once we get in, it has a couple day lag time here. So we got phase 1, phase 2. This is a colder than average time frame for December, January, and February, typically across the region. So we'll see that in the coming week. This supports, of course, this period here of below average temperatures that are coming in. And we had this outlined for a while too. But once it gets past that, you can see it gets into phases 3 and 4, which are a little bit warmer, and that supports also this period here. Now, how long does it last? Now, as far as the Madden-Julian Oscillation is concerned, this only goes to the 15th. It gets to about phase 3, phase 4 border or so, and then goes into the circle of death after that point, which means the tropical forcing would have no effect on the pattern. If you want an explanation about what this does, what the Madden-Julian Oscillation does, it's an intraseasonal variability pattern, so that just will control the jet. You basically have a poleward heat flux given off by any convection that's out in this area, so it pumps up the ridges out here, and changes the jet stream patterns and colder temperatures in the United States. I mean, there's a lot of better explanation. I went into that last week. I don't want to get into that again today because we have so much to discuss. But one thing we do know is the cold shot is coming between that 5th and 11th period, so about a week. And there's going to be a couple shots coming in here. This is actually looking at Wednesday this week, so you have some colder temperatures this week on Wednesday. Of course, you have another batch coming in behind it that's going to come in. It's going to be actually ushered in by a clipper system that's going to move through the upper Great Lakes and across New England. I don't think it does anything here Thursday night, maybe a few snow flurries with that, but it's just a clipper system moving rapidly through. And that's going to set the stage for the antecedent cold that will be in place before this system that could come in at the end of the week, actually looking at next weekend, next Saturday and or Sunday. So after that point, we do turn milder, and this is post-December 12th. Okay, we get the warmer temperatures coming in here. I don't think it's going to be overwhelming. This looks like a 3-4 day period of at least slightly above average temperatures, and then this continues off to the north and east. So we will be just, maybe near to slightly above average after that point. This is not a blowtorch, though, so we're not talking about 60s and 70s and get the shorts out again. But we will have a relaxation period, if you will. And the question is just going to be, how long does that last? We looked at the 2014-2015 winter analog last week and showed that this was very similar to how November played out across the nation. This is looking at November 2014. And as far as sea surface temperature anomalies across the Pacific, it was very similar in terms of where the placement and greatest warming was of the sea surface temperatures that dictate El Niño and how our weather patterns react to that. And of course with other factors, but this is how November pretty much played out across our nation this year also, and this is what it did in 2014 in December. It turned a lot warmer, especially across the northern areas. Well, that looks familiar. Okay, turned to warmer. So and this is what's expected here this year, current time, middle of the month. Well, that's what happened in 2014, but we didn't have any stratospheric help that year, where the polar vortex was weak enough where you could have a sudden stratospheric warming event and get that colder air away from the polar regions and move it further southward. So as a result, it was a warmer than average month in December 2014. If you look beyond that in 2015, January, February, March, it was colder than average, especially February, and we had a very productive winter that year. So this is not a bad thing, even if this were to hold on and dominate the rest of December. I don't think it does that, though. One of those things we were talking about was the stratospheric warming episodes. Look, you have another one forecast to come in here right before the middle of the month. Very strong episode of warming up at that level where you have a downward propagation of that warming in the stratosphere to the troposphere, which forces the cold air in the polar regions away from the poles and further southward in latitude. Now, the question then is, where does that cold get displaced from, or where does it go to? I mean, that doesn't always necessarily mean North America will see that. It could be over in Europe. It could be over in Asia, Siberia. Right now, there's still some questions on where exactly that gets displaced, and the European model of all things is actually showing that affecting our area a little bit better than the GEFS, which is our GFS ensembles. So a little question on where that goes and where that heads. If it ends up in more so in Asia and Europe or Eurasia, whatever have you. Went on the wrong image. But this is something that we're watching for that could limit this warm time frame. And then we get to the last week of the month, we're colder than average instead of just what we have now, which is near average. And you see I have moderately low confidence in that because of those uncertainties. So we'll see how that plays out. But this is something I'll be watching here over the next week or so. Let's get into the storm signal. This is the same image I showed you last week of this was at that time 384 hours into the future. And just showing you that there's a potential for snow down the road. That's all this does. This is when the model started coming into range. Of course, we were talking about this in the weeks prior to that we were highlighting this period in early December of a snow event. And that is still on the table. But we use these ensembles. These are just like the GFS running an additional 20 times, and we can see that there were chances. Some of those members were saying, hey, we're going to get some snow. Some were saying no. Some were saying further north. There's a lot of different solutions here, but the idea here is you're not looking at these verbatim and saying, oh, well, this one here says we're going to get the most snow, so we're going to run with it. No, it doesn't work like that. Or actually, it would be this one. But it doesn't work like that. It just gives us an idea that, hey, the models are picking up on something, that there's a signal out there. So when we put these, when it says winter storm signal right here between the 8th and 9th, that is still a signal today. But that signal just means that there's something that could happen in that time frame, and the things might come together just right. And if it were to occur, it would be in this range. That's all that means. Here's what the models had over the last couple days. I'm just going to cherry pick one of them. It's just to give you an idea of what could happen. A system moving near the Delmarva. It would be kind of like an overrunning event, not so much a massive storm here along the coast here that just dumps for a while. It'll be quick moving, so it's not going to be something that dumps 1 to 2 feet either. But you could get some areas 4, 6, 8 inches of snow. Not an impossibility. So it's just a matter of where does this track, and there's some things that we're looking at that could determine that. And they're looking at the upper air analysis. We can see this here in the southwestern United States. This is our storm. This will be the eventual storm here for the weekend. This here is a clipper system moving through on Thursday evening, Thursday overnight. A little fast-moving clipper. All that's going to do is reinforce the cold air over the northeast United States and get it cold, antecedent cold, prior to this storm coming in. Now, the speed of this system right here, how fast does it move across the country? It will eject eastward. And here's looking at a couple days later. This is looking at the 8th. This is before the storm would hit also. How quickly does this eject? Here's your system. The former clipper is now well offshore. It's over here, but you still have sufficient cold over the northeast United States. So you have almost like a gradient pattern where you have one meeting the other, and enough cold air in place where you could have a storm. But if this system right here, this is our main system right here, if this decides to move a little bit faster, it's more progressive, then it just flat out to sea, and it's south of the region, and we don't get anything here. If it is too amplified, meaning it's very deep and very strong, it ends up cutting over our region, so we have a snow changing to rain situation, maybe some icing involved, okay? And if you split the difference and go in the middle, just play the middle ground right now, and it goes right here like this, and the timing's not too fast or too slow, then you have something like this, okay? Now, people are trying to focus on, well, it's going to be south, the I-78 point south, it looks like is going to be the biggest threats, and further north, it's only going to be light stuff. I don't want to get into specifics about that until we can figure out this timing, and nobody knows what this timing is yet. This piece right here and how fast it moves from the Four Corners region across the country, across the southern United States, how amplified it is, and this will determine, the speed of this will determine exactly what it does. Again, too fast, it stays south. Too slow, and it cuts inland, and we get snow to start because we still have that cold in place initially, but going over to rain, and somewhere in the middle, and you get a solution to something like this. Okay, or it could be a little bit further than this, and heavy snows are going a little bit further than indicated here, and you have a rain snow line instead of being near the shore points. Instead, it's a little bit further closer to I-95. It could be further south and east. There's a couple different solutions with that. But again, timing is going to be critical with this, so we're not ready yet to say, hey, this is going to do this, or it's going to do X, Y, and Z. That'll come hopefully by the middle of the week when we start getting into our first call maps and things like that. I did want to take a look at, like we do every week, the El Nino in the Eastern Pacific. We have seen some warming out in those regions of late. So this is, compared to last week, we actually saw some extensive warming, about 0.5 degree or greater in some cases in the Niño 3.4 and 3 regions. But elsewhere, we're looking at it was more like a centralized look this week, where the warmest anomalies are in the 3 and 3.4. That's just position across the Pacific Ocean. These are the 3 and 3.4 regions right in here. So that's where your greatest warming is right now. That could indicate, if you have several weeks to look at this, and it keeps doing that, that could indicate that we could see that greatest warming near the Peruvian coast moving westward with time, which is what we saw in 2014. So that could happen, and that's these areas right here. We're seeing the greatest warming rate in here, and you can see that by the sea surface temperature anomalies. This is just going to help fuel the southern jet for winter. So it gives us an active pattern continuing into winter. Everybody's asking me, wow, we had so much rain. I hate this rain. Is this going to continue into winter? Are we going to let up soon? No, it's probably going to continue. Get used to it. Except now we're going to get into more of a wintry threat with time because we have more cold in place to deal with. And we also have this feature up here, the warm temperatures up in the Gulf of Alaska along the western coast of the United States that could eventually, I think with time, this is a bigger player like it was in 2014, 2015, where the negative EPO starts taking over and you have a strong ridge out west and then cold in the east and maybe just in the northeast, but that's where we live, so we have to pay close attention to that. And we had a very productive winter that year, very much above average snowfall in most areas. So the EPO can play a big role in the wintertime, but I don't think you're really going to get into that so much, the effects of that, once we get into January and beyond. But regardless, that's something to keep an eye on as well. So I do want to summarize this quick because we are getting into the near the 16-minute mark here. Colder than average temperatures return this week from Tuesday onward, lasting 1 week. A milder period returns post-December 12th, but questions remain on how long this lasts. Again, I think it's going to be like we're going to be above average, or at least slightly above average, maybe near to slightly above average up through about Christmas or maybe just before. But I think that last week of December, we could run into some more snow chances as that colder air comes back in. Again, even if it was near average for the end of December is pretty cold. Okay, it's the coldest time of the year, so you don't have to be below average to get snow. That's not necessarily true. So we're going to watch that very closely, and of course the stratosphere, and then what that does will actually affect how long this period lasts. And of course our next winter storm signal time frame to watch is next weekend, December 8th and 9th, and we'll be covering that throughout the week. Of course, in the premium forum, we're going to start the model analysis on Monday, assuming it's still there in the premium forum. If you want to become a member of that, this is an optional thing. We do have publicly released videos every day and forecasts and things like that, but we're not going to get into detail publicly and with maps and things like that till we get closer to the event at the end of the week. We are talking the premium forum up to 7 days out. We're actually going to start this on Monday because right now you're still we don't know. Okay, so we're going to go through that in the premium forum. Of course, the My Pocket Meteorologist text alerts will be alerting you in advance of any system coming in toward the end of the week and or beyond throughout the entire winter. If you have not signed up for these programs yet, it's a good time to get signed up for that because we are going to get more active. If not this weekend, we're going to have it toward the end of the month. So there is time to get in there, but I would definitely recommend getting that sooner rather than later, so you're ready to go with everything, not just the winter storms, but timing and specific amounts by your location for snow, ice, changeover times, things like that. We do all that through the My Pocket Meteorologist text alerts. So it's a very good program. This is now our 6th year in a row. All you have to do is click on the My Pocket Meteorologist image below this post. It'll take you directly to that page. You can learn more about it, and you can sign up directly from that page. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 2nd. Join us again next week. Maybe we'll be talking about a winter storm at that point, or maybe an ongoing winter storm at that point. We'll see, but continue to follow us throughout the week for updates. Take care.